With that, we're to our final speaker of the morning. Jackie Stewart is joining us. Jackie is the State Director of Energy in Depth, Ohio. For those of you who have not went out to Energy in Depth site, another great resource, another great place to go for tools when you're talking to the public and trying to deliver the message from the industry. Jackie, Jackie works for FTI Consulting and is the state director, as we mentioned, for Energy in Depth, Ohio. Ms. Stewart has over a decade of experience in government and community relations, public policy, and event management. I met Jackie while she was working with U.S. Representative Bill Johnson. She set up the first ever Women in Energy Summit in Ohio and earned best practices from the Ohio House Republican Conference for several oil and natural gas events during her time with Congressman Johnson. Jackie also was named the Southeastern Ohio Oil and Gas Association's Workhorse of the Year. Let me introduce Jackie and thank her for all her work on behalf of our industry.
Hi there. It's always hard to be the speaker before lunch, so we'll try to make this quick. Thank you so much to the Ohio Oil and Gas Association and Sean Bennett and his team. This has been my first year with Energy in Depth, and I'm excited to report some of the great things that we've been working on through my first year. Here we go. Okay, so first of all, Energy in Depth has given an update here every single year, so I hope that everyone is familiar with Energy in Depth, but just as a snapshot of where we've been and kind of where we're going, starting in 2009, and I did just say the previous speaker was amazing, and everything that he said is what we live every single day, defending and promoting this industry. And what I'm going to talk about today is how we're taking the message that you just heard, but we're localizing it here in Ohio, and how we're trying to push back on some of these myths and untruths about the industry and why it's so important. And we have a wonderful example that we're going to talk about today with the University of Cincinnati study, and I hope that everyone here can share the good news of this phenomenal study that is groundbreaking in Ohio. So, wanted to kind of capture what happened in 2015 with regard to Energy in Depth. So we surpassed 1 million hits on Google for Energy in Depth in Ohio. So that's just the Energy in Depth Ohio specific site. We were at 235,000, and probably what we're most proud of actually is the stories that Energy in Depth has been quoted in. So nationally, EID was quoted, and this doesn't include, by the way, subscription services. So like E&E and some of the different subscription news publications, just the Google hits for EID, 424 times the Energy in Depth was quoted. And of that, I'm really excited to tell you that Ohio had 212 times that the media reported on a statement that, or facts or blogs or those kinds of things. So really, really exciting. Twitter, Facebook, we're continuing to drive people to the website. Thank you to the Ohio Oil and Gas Association, API, many of your companies continuing to drive people to the website. It's huge. Thank you. And I just want to give you a snapshot of what we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So this is really funny. So Cleveland Plain Dealer, oops. Oh, okay, sorry about that. So Cleveland Plain Dealer had a guest column by the Mom's Clean Air Force, and this is on the right. And so this woman wrote in and wrote a story about methane. And within a matter of about a week, she received 52 comments from the public on her post. And she said, I'm a conservative Republican, and I'm a mother, and speaking to the emotional arguments that we just heard about, right? Remember? Tugging on the heartstrings? So I saw this, and I said, oh, no. First of all, I'm 7 months pregnant, and normally I don't, when I speak, I'm not usually saying, oh, I'm a mother too, I'm a woman too. But this one really bothered me, bad. So I called the Cleveland Plain Dealer and said, you know what, can we do a guest column as well on this issue? I said, absolutely, go ahead. 48 hours, I actually had a company send me an email, and they said, Jackie, whatever you do, don't look at the comments on your guest column. Just don't do it. And I said, why? How bad can it be? They said, it's pretty bad. So the worst comment actually has been taken down by the Cleveland Plain Dealer, but they had some folks that were calling on me to be waterboarded with frack water, which was awesome. And then some other comments, which I'm not even going to repeat, that are on here. You can see, but and these were only just a couple. I mean, they were really, really bad. So I wanted to bring this up because what would have happened if nobody even called or submitted a guest column back to this woman? They're reading an article from a so-called conservative woman that's talking about how she's concerned about the oil and gas industry because it impacts her children. And that would have never gone checked. This can't be. We cannot allow this any longer. And I will tell you, this past year, it's been a lot of fun watching people's faces when I come on stage or I'm at a grassroots event talking to landowners, and they really, really don't expect to hear things like, I'm a mother too, or I'm a parent, or I'm an uncle or an aunt, and guess what? I care about the environment too. And these are the things, again, talking about the emotional debate that we've really got to get better at, and it's important. So I want to talk about, and there's no greater example of this exact thing playing out in a very, very real way than what we saw just last month. And I want to use this example for a couple reasons. First of all, this study by the University of Cincinnati is the most important, groundbreaking study that's ever taken place in Ohio. It's the first ever multi-year university, any university study that looked at groundwater contamination and impacts of Utica shale. Took 191 samples from 5 counties. It received an award from the Ohio Environmental Council, the first ever environmental award. So wouldn't you think that when the University of Cincinnati was finished with this study, they'd be pretty proud of it, right? I mean, they put out a bunch of press releases for the past 3 years talking about how awesome it was that they were studying groundwater contamination, hydraulic fracturing. You would think. So, the key facts about the University of Cincinnati study that you need to know, most importantly, is it was a very, very comprehensive study. And for those of you that have acreage and you operate in these particular counties that it looked at, I would really recommend that these facts just come very quickly to you. Because when you look at Gasland and so many of these myths regarding groundwater contamination, right here in Ohio, we have no better example than this multi-year study to look at. And another key issue with this study, and for those of you, how many people are familiar with what happened with Dimmock in Marcellus, Pennsylvania? Okay. What was the big issue with Pennsylvania versus Ohio? No samples before oil and gas development started. Guess what? This study, all 191 samples were taken before, during, and after drilling. Huge, huge. And then on top of that, they also conducted an isotopic analysis of those samples, which basically means that the researchers were able to identify the DNA root source of methane. So they can tell if any of these water samples came from natural gas, hydraulic fracturing, pipelines, anything, they can tell. So, quote, "We have found no evidence for natural gas contamination from shale oil and gas mining in any of the sampled groundwater wells in our study." But don't take my word for it. Can you cue up the video, please?
We never saw a significant increase in methane concentration after a fracking well was drilled. The samples that we collected that were very high in methane clearly did not have a natural gas source. And this was unexpected. Actually, some of our highest observed methane concentrations were not near a fracking well at all. There was no significant change in methane concentration over time, even as more and more natural gas wells were drilled in the area. This is an example of the valuable aspect of our study, is that we were taking samples as more and more wells were drilled, so that we could potentially attribute causation to a contamination.
How about that? Pretty cool, huh? Well, for those of you who may ask, what do we do at Energy in Depth on the ground? Why is it important? Why is it important that the Ohio Oil and Gas Association, through the hard work of Mike Chadsey, literally traveling the state every single day, why is it important that we're out in the community, talking to the media, talking with folks? Well, here's why. This study, this groundbreaking 3-year study that's had story after story after story over the past 3 years, won an environmental award. Guess where it was announced? The Carroll County Concerned Citizens meeting on a freezing cold winter night at 7 o'clock at a church in front of like 20 activists. But luckily, Energy in Depth was there, as well as Mike Chadsey with the Ohio Oil and Gas Association, because we were excited to see what the researchers had to say about this groundbreaking report. And despite the fact that there had been press releases that this report and the study was coming out, there was only one reporter that was there. Thank God that John Baker was there. And if he's here, thank you, John, for coming out that night. But one reporter, one article in the paper, one, for a week. And it was unbelievable. But what was really unbelievable at the meeting in Carroll County, someone in the audience asked, with all due respect, if the results had been different, this would be national news. What's going on? And the lead researcher said, well, that's a good point. Our funders were quite frankly disappointed in the results of this study. And Mike Chadsey and I were kind of like, come again? You have on your frequently asked questions that this study was not funded by oil and gas or activist groups. So how can anyone be disappointed, right? That doesn't make any sense. So we kind of left the meeting like, I can't even believe that just happened, So, of course, we started doing some research, and the U.S. Chamber also caught wind of this one story, and lo and behold, some of the funding for this study, in fact, 18% of the water sampling funding portion of the study was funded by an activist group that has funded similar studies trying to prove the groundwater is contaminated by hydraulic fracturing all over the country. But what I, and maybe this is because of my previous life in politics, found even more troubling is that taxpayer dollars, state and federal, were also used for the study. They weren't used in the water sampling, but they were used to purchase the equipment to actually read what the water sample said. So, in short, this entire study was funded by equipment from taxpayers, from all of you, me included, and the water sampling was funded by activists, nonprofits, and it goes one step further. They recruited the water samples volunteers from the Carroll County Concerned Citizens Group, which is part of the network of banned fracking groups across the state of Ohio, folks. And when the researcher told this group at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday or Wednesday night on a cold winter's night that there was no groundwater contamination from natural gas, and they were disappointed, the whole room was completely quiet. They didn't even know what to do. So, like I said, we have a huge study that received one media hit in 1 week. The study itself was only accessible on the Carroll County Concerned Citizens website, which means that you actually had to visit their website just to see the study. It was unbelievable what was happening. Well, we weren't going to let that fly at all. So, here's what happened. When we started talking to reporters and calling reporters up, and you know what these reporters tell us all the time? We are bombarded with press releases from activist groups. They call us and bug us all the time. They're giving us all this information. We never hear from you guys. Well, they're hearing from us now, and look what's happening as a result. In less than 1 month from when this study was released, we went from one article to, and this isn't even all of them, by the way. I mean, this is blown up. National news. The University of Cincinnati has now posted the study on their website and admitted that some of their funding was received from activist groups. So, my point is, folks, is that like the previous speaker was talking about, and so many great points, but on a very local level, the reporters they need to hear our side. They really, really do. And they need to hear it with facts. And this is my job as State Director for Energy in Depth. This is what we do. And I want to let you know that it's worthwhile, and it is disappointing some people. Sorry, Leo. I was going to use Bernie Sanders, but this was more fun. So, with that said, thank you again for allowing us to do what we do and defend and promote this industry every single day. It is an absolute honor, and I love it. It is so much fun. I will tell you that, again, Mike Chazzy is doing such a great job with the Ohio Oil and Gas Association. We have to win the hearts and minds, and it is an emotional debate, but it's also a debate over facts as well. The problem is we have to get the facts out, and if we haven't learned anything from the presidential race going on right now, Media is very, very important. And for all the media who came today and yesterday and tomorrow, thank you. Thank you so much for hearing us out. Thank you for every time that you've taken our calls to say, hey, do you have a comment about this particular issue? So for any of the media that are here today, I just wanted to say thank you so much. And thank you to all of you. Enjoy your lunch.